From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in the Las Vegas Hotel Casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
Welcome back to On the Corner of Main Street. The Plaza Pod experience is back. Good to be with you, Gary.
How are you today?
Doing great, thank you. Lovely, lovely day here. Can't wait for summer to be over. All the exciting things that come with summer being over.
Yeah, we both survived Hurricane Hillary coming into town.
That was a ridiculous thing. They asked me, I was flying back from England, and they were like, oh, you can't fly back. It's not going to be safe. There's a hurricane. I swear I've never had a smoother flight in. It's never been more beautiful out the window. There was zero cloud. It was bizarre. I was like, where's the storm? I was getting a little freaked out. Nothing. So, yes, we survived the hurricane.
Yeah, we had a little bit of rain, but otherwise it cooled it off, and it made it nice and comfortable the last week or so.
Yeah, we did. I wanted to just mention one thing before we start today's guest and the insight into that. The city and the industry lost a legend in Tony Santo last week, and he actually was here at the Plaza from 2000, and I could get my dates slightly wrong, but 2008, 2009 till about 2012, 13. And he was sort of the first guy in gaming that gave me a lot of lessons, a lot of things, a lot of insight. He was arguably my first mentor. Obviously, Paul Zabladovich is the reason why I'm here, and he gave me the opportunity. But Tony was really the first guy in gaming who took me under his wing, exposed me to it. He was the president of the Flamingo, Bally's Paris, did a lot of other operations in town. And he always would say the good operators, at the Flamingo at least, the good operators were doing X million, but the great operators were doing that plus more. And it opened my eyes to how much, not easier it was on the Strip, but on the Strip you just got people walk into your doors and you got guaranteed business. And back in 2008, 2009, it wasn't as easy downtown.
There was no guaranteed business.
There was no guaranteed business for sure. So he really took me on his wing, and he passed away, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he gave me a couple of really good lessons. One of them I never really talk about personally, is more personal, but he was really the first person who was adamant that I should marry my wife, who's my wife today.
Really?
But at the time, before I knew that she was going to be my wife, he was absolutely adamant, and he said, you should. He gave me great advice in terms of, don't worry about what other people think or your parents think. It's all about what you think, because you're the one who has to live with them. So do what's best for you. And then on the business side, he was really good with team members. He opened my eyes to how important that was, to caring about your team members, to getting to know them, to taking the time to invest in your team members. And he would always say, even in those difficult years in 2008, 9, 10, as a leader, you have to put on the front. Even if it's difficult, you have to lead with confidence and exude positivity, because if you panic, then that panic spreads real fast.
Right. And
he was an expert at that. Even in those crisis years that we were having, he just led with strength and gave everyone that comfort that they're going to be okay. So it was pretty amazing to work under him for 4 or 5 years, and very, very sad loss for the industry.
Yeah. When was the last time you had made contact with him?
It'd been a while, because he went up to Reno afterwards, and then he went to Canada, and his family were amazing people. So very sad. But yeah, I hadn't seen him for a few years.
Perfect. Yeah. All the best to his family and friends. And he passed unexpectedly at the age of 61. So.
Oh, you read that online?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. But anyway, in lighter news, I've really been quite excited by things happening here at the Plaza. One of the most interesting things in the last 2 weeks is T-Mobile had 2 concerts back to back. They had a guy called Zach Bryan, who's a country singer, incredible country singer, last Friday night, and then, 2 Friday nights ago, and then last weekend it was Duran Duran, and both bands or singers ended up down at the Plaza before performing at T-Mobile, which I thought was a pretty good feather in our cap in terms of we were obviously doing something right. Zach Bryan, his manager called a friend of mine who reached out to me and said he loves pickleball.
Really?
And all he wanted to do before he played a sold-out T-Mobile concert was play pickleball, and could he bring his team down to the Plaza. So 2 Fridays ago, the Zach Bryan team were all playing pickleball here, and we had some really good Oklahoma casino guests, and they were like, Jonathan, what is going on right now? Why is Zach Bryan playing pickleball at the Plaza a few hours before he's going on stage at T-Mobile? So I thought that was pretty cool. And then last Friday...
Did you play him?
No, I didn't. I wasn't here yet. I wasn't here. Oh, I would have
Yeah.
played him if I was here.
Yeah.
I would have taken him on for sure. But it would have been embarrassing to beat him on my own court. So.
Right.
But yeah, I would have played him.
Okay. Was Duran up there playing pickleball the next night?
No. So then the next week, unbeknownst to any of us, Simon Le Bon walks into Oscar's with a couple of friends and has dinner here on Friday night, and he's playing T-Mobile Saturday night. So
Wow.
it was late. He was late to come in, and I really thought that was pretty amazing that these guys are choosing to spend their time at Plaza and Oscars before playing T-Mobile. So the question is, when is Beyonce coming?
I think they're all listening to our podcast, and they'll be like, you know what, we got to get down to Oscars. We got to go play some pickleball.
That could also be it. But yeah, it's a great feather in our cap that these people want to be down here, and there's a lot of good things happening here. We just finished RollerCon. A lot of people on roller skates running around downtown Las Vegas was pretty cool.
Right.
A couple of weeks till Life is Beautiful, so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, great. Today we have a very exciting guest.
Peter Mouskindas is a very good friend of mine. I met him through Fred Mosler, who was also on our podcast in one of the earlier episodes. He introduced us, became a good friend, great guy. And I invited him to do this a long time ago, but it's been tough with the summer to coordinate it. I wanted to give people some insight into the inner workings of food distribution and how these casinos in the middle of the desert are getting the best, freshest produce in the world and putting out some of the best food in the world. And why are we known as a foodie city when we're in the middle of absolutely nowhere? So he was the best person I could think of to share that story.
Joining us today is the co-CEO of the largest independent food distribution service in the Intermountain West, Nicholas & Company. Welcome, Peter Mouskindas, to On the Corner of Main Street. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for having me. I certainly appreciate you and Jonathan hosting me, and this is wonderful to be at the Plaza. This is really, really exciting what you guys have done as well, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Peter, my good friend. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. You're the co-CEO, but you're also a very dear friend, so thanks for taking the time in the middle of August to do a podcast with us. It could be anywhere in the world, but you're with us, so thank you.
Pleasure.
We appreciate it. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of our episodes of a podcast. Have you done many podcasts?
Haven't done a lot of podcasts, We've done interviews and news, but not a lot of podcasts.
Well, honored to have you here. We do this just to share a little insight into the inner workings of Vegas, the history of Vegas, how things came to be. I know you've joined us for some Oscars dinner series. You're a guy who's been in town a long time, got an amazing history that we'll, I'm sure, hear a lot about. But we do this just to share the inner workings of the casino business and our industry and our town with people, and you're a big part of that. So again, really appreciate you taking the time. And as I read yesterday, everyone has to eat. So you got job security. you got job security
Right,
for
yeah.
life. So
And it's been a long time since we've had any episodes where we've dived into the food and beverage side, so it's
Yeah.
good to kind of bring that back up.
from a
So
different perspective.
from a completely different perspective than the actual operators of the restaurants around town. So if you can kind of give us a little bit of a history of what Nicholas & Company was and how it started.
Sure, I appreciate it, Gary. Thank you guys again for having me. So Nicholas & Company, Nicholas actually was my grandfather. So I'm third generation. We are actually now in fourth generation. The co-CEO is my wife, Nicole. So she's my right arm. She's the best of me, as we say. But Nicholas,
She's an amazing lady, by the way.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Great friend
Appreciate it.
as well. And you said on the way in here, sorry to interrupt you
No
already,
worries.
but you're third generation.
Correct.
And we are redoing our south entrance. And Peter was just telling me the people doing our south entrance are Yesco. Mm-hmm. They're fifth generation.
Yeah, they're going into their fifth.
I mean, third generation means you're the third member of your family to be running this business, right?
Yeah, correct.
So that's almost unheard of in America. Never mind fifth generation.
Yeah.
To be third, that's pretty amazing. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. My father reminds me all the time is, you have about a 2% chance of, making it. And so I'm reminded that, yeah, I'm like, thanks, Dad. Greek father, remind me every day. There's motivation, right? Yeah. But, as we go back and look, Nicholas Mouskindas, my grandfather, came from the island of Crete, Greece, and in their, late 1800s, and actually came over because Greece at that time was very impoverished. It was just terrible. He was from a big family. It wasn't a good time. He had a cousin that actually worked in the Kennecott copper mines in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is actually the largest open pit copper mine in the world still to this day. He eventually decided at 17 to come over. So let me paint a picture for you. Nicholas Mouskindas was 4'9", 100 pounds wet practically. And he gets the courage to come from Crete, Greece. So if you know the geography of Crete, you leave Crete, you go to Suda Bay, you go up to Athens, and then you have to, in a boat, right, all the way to Ellis Island. He was in steerage for 32 days getting to just Ellis Island alone. And he could not speak any English. So he's in steerage with people, Greece all over because they stopped in different ports. They get to Ellis Island. They basically put him through a psychological test. So if you can imagine a round peg, they're like, put it in a square hole. And if you didn't pass, they discard you off.
So this is what they're doing for everyone coming off the boats?
Correct. They did this for everybody coming off the boats. They added their name. An interesting thing about the name, real quick, is...
What year was this?
This was in about 1893-ish, 5-ish. We're kind of mapping that. And as a matter of fact, we donate to the Lee Iacocca Institute, who put up the money for the immigrants. And if you go into the institute there in Ellis Island, you'll see actually our name and others' names that have donated. It's fascinating if you ever get a chance to go there. But all the people that came through, so what ended up happening is they also checked you for your eyes. And if you had an eye disease, they put an E on your collar and discard you off. So here's a little bit of trivia question. What's the second largest population next to Greece itself?
Of what?
Of population of Greeks.
Oh, Greece. Sorry.
Sorry. What's the next population of Greeks?
Greeks, besides for Greece, I know the answer is Australia.
The answer. It is Australia, correct. Yeah. And so they discarded. They did not want to go back to Greece or Europe, so they jumped in boats and went back down to Australia. My grandfather, lucky enough, passed the tests and proceeded through the cattle maze that they had him go through. They didn't treat him very well. So with that, he knew he had to get to Utah. His cousin was there, George. He had to get to Utah. He got on a train.
And when he set out for the United States, the plan was always to get to Utah.
Correct. That was the end-up goal. 17, can't speak English. He's getting there. So he jumps on a cattle train. 2 weeks, cattle train, with a sign on his back that said Utah. Gets to Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hold on. What train are we on now?
Now you were on the UP, Union Pacific.
So he's probably come past the plaza.
He probably came to the plaza. Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about some of the Greeks that came here, and some of the families are still here. But yeah, the train. Yeah, exactly. So he gets there, right? He gets there. He gets a ride up to Kennecott Copper, and at that time, there was a lot of immigrants that were there. Not only Greeks, but Cretans from the island of Crete. Believe it or not, a lot of Italians. So and this is even when the Mormons were even settling. So they're all coming in and things like that. The Mormons were doing land and more in farming and things like this. So they had Greek Town, which is still there in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have a tribute to it. But anyway, he gets there. His uncle, George introduces him to the owner of Kennecott Copper. Puts him to work. Now, again, 4'9", 100 pounds. Gives him a 110-pound air jack. So they're air jack, right? So he lives with his cousin. 2 weeks goes by. He comes home. He's working the night shift. He comes home and he shakes this slip in his hand. He goes, look, George, I got a raise. He goes, no, Nicholas, that's a pink slip. In America, that means you just got fired. So he did. So the owner of Kennecott fired my grandfather because he could barely hold his air jack. Yeah. So time went on.
And no one called OSHA?
Yeah, where was HR?
Not in the 1890s.
No. And so what ended up happening, he did some odds and ends jobs, worked at bars and all these things, but he ended up getting, which is fascinating, he ended up getting a job with a bakery. And at that time, you had to earn your route. Mm. So in order to earn his route, because he was, just starting this opportunity, he would go down and pick up the grain and wheat from the Union Pacific Railroad. And they'd come in anywhere from 50 to 100-pound bags. They would wheel them down, and he'd take them. While this was happening, the conductors and the train engineers would also be pulling off cans of peaches and fruit. Well, the history of Salt Lake City is there's a city up north called Fruit Heights, hence its name. They had like 13 family canneries. They produce all these wonderful, and mainly for retail. And so they produced all these cans. They'd bring them down on the train. So when Nicholas was down there picking up the wheat and some of the barleys and grains, flour, he noticed that they were discarding some of these canned goods off the side of the trains. And so he walked up and he says, hey, Gary, he said, what are you doing with these cans? Nothing, Nicholas. We can't sell them. They have dents on them. Can I take them? Sure, take as many as you want. So he would go home with the wheat and all these bags. He'd go home and soak the labels off the cans, remake a label with potato starch paste, right? Come back up and show up at Jonathan's bagelry, or he showed up at the pastry shop, or even some of the restaurants, and say, "Hey, Jonathan, I have, you've got your schnitzel, I've got your paninis, I've got your baguettes, I've got all these things. And by the way, I've got some canned peaches and pears. Nicholas, what are you doing?" He goes, "No, I've got you in the business. I've got these canned peaches. What's wrong with them? They've got a little dent on them. What do you want for them? Give me 75 cents on the dollar." And here we are today. One of the largest, doing over $1 billion in food sales, and still going to fourth generation. Now, my son, Nicholas, his name is Nicholas, and my daughter are both getting their degrees and coming in through the business, and there's a pathway that they have to go through this. And she's a sophomore in college and studying in business.
Is it like the royal family? Are you the first sibling? Are you the first child that your children automatically become into the business, or do you have any siblings that might challenge them for rights into the business?
So I have a sister. She was in there for a brief time, but really elected to go a different path, and then it was just me. And I always wanted to be driven to do this. I just enjoyed it. Yeah. It was tough. I have a very strong, wonderful father, but a loving, heavy hand, right? Mm-hmm. And a wonderful mother, who my father is still alive, 89. Calls me every day.
I met him the other night. He is sharp as can be. Sharp as can be. Knows everything that's going on, telling jokes, keep busting people's balls.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true. And Jonathan's right. I bought all the stock from him. He no longer is involved in the company. I made two smart-ass remarks. I said to him, he goes, "Oh, I'm just an employee." I said, "Dad, you don't even own the company. You're not even an employee. Don't be a wise ass," right? And the other thing is I did give him his iPad, because he would go through, in the old days, he'd go through the green bar paper, but now he goes through his iPad. He lives in Dallas now, and he and Mom, with my sister and brother-in-law, and he'll go through his iPad every morning, and he'll look who's, the Plaza, what they buy. Oh, they didn't buy lettuce, or they didn't buy, cheese, or they didn't buy steaks this week, or whatever. And he'll always bang on me about, do I need to come back? But when the numbers are good, he sends me the emoji with a thumbs up. When the numbers are not good, he sends me the poop with the eyes. He's 89. God bless him. So it was wonderful. And
two quick questions, Peter. What is the food distribution business?
So really, the food distribution came about because retail obviously was the dominant side. You all know retail is a smaller pack size. You go in there, and they have a variety of, fruits and vegetables, like we talked about with my grandfather, but they're a smaller pack size. What came to be was actually institutional food distribution, or food service, where the restaurants needed a different quality, a different spec, and a larger size. Right. Is really what it came down to, right? So, as a matter of fact, at one of the universities up in Utah, we actually did a cutting, and to show the difference in retail. And one of the things that it's spec driven through chefs, and what they wanted to see is uniformity. So in retail, they weren't getting quite the uniformity. In food service, what they decided to do is get with the manufacturers or the growers and say, if I want canned peaches, I want those two in halves, sliced in half. I want those two to match. They weren't getting that in retail, right? So they made a spec. And what ended up happening is blowing up into food service. So now your chef, Jonathan, here at the Plaza, they get a different spec than going into the grocery store. Also, there's more of a consistency, because chefs rely on their recipes, and people dine because of consistency. Right. And so what happens, Gary, is when the chefs come and look at the product, they want to make sure you have top-notch shelf and quality, but you have a consistent product all the time, because they're tailoring their recipes towards it. Right. And when you change that, it blows the whole dynamics out. So when Dad actually coming back, and we'll talk about a little bit of Las Vegas, in 1966, he and 13 independent food distributors formed the Nugget label. And it was quite the name at the time, and it was basically going and seeking customers, but taking one step with chefs and saying, what do you want in the industry? Okay. Well, this is what we're looking for. And one of the gentlemen that helped that, and was a dear friend, was Jim Shatakis of Shatakis Wholesale. Now, they're no longer, the name's still out there, but the family's passed on and gone on, and wonderful people. And
Who runs Shatakis now?
I don't know who's running it now.
Not Shatakis.
No, not Shatakis. It's a different family. Yeah,
okay.
Right now it's a myriad. It's like 55 different owners and something like that. But Jim and his bride had taken it to the next level. His children were in it for a bit, and then he passed away, and then they sold the business off. Okay.
If you could kind of walk our guests through the logistics of, Las Vegas is a desert. We don't grow much here in Nevada, right? So how does...
You don't eat the fish out of
Lake Mead? No.
But although you do have ice cream. Good Humor has Ken's dressings are here, so there's some.
But first,
go ahead, Gary.
How do they get here?
Right. Yeah. I guess that's the question: is how are you delivering fresh food? Basically to the desert,
Right.
From everywhere in the world. That you're being able to source fish and be able to source meat and things like that. How do you get it fresh to such an area that has nothing to produce itself here locally?
Yeah, one word: logistics. As a matter of fact, my son is getting his degree in supply chain management at TCU, and that's one of the biggest opportunities out there that you're seeing that's happening, right? I mean, we're dealing with the Amazons of the world and others, and transportation, logistics, train. Some people say the train would go away. It's not. Maybe the plane, that's not. I mean, that's how we're bringing it in. It may be on rail, it may be on rubber, and it may be in the air, and we're bringing it in from all over. We carry thousands of line items of product in our warehouses and distribution centers, but we process hundreds of thousands of product from all over the world, for maybe it's a special order or somebody wants something. If it's out there and accessible, we will get it. If Jonathan's chef says, Peter, can you find me a brown kumquat and it exists, we'll do it. They also may have the resource too. They may say, hey, my friend owns a seafood company, is the catcher. I know the fisherman, I know the captain. Would you work with them? Absolutely. We just ask is give us the first right of opportunity and let us prove to you we can do a good job. And then if we don't, the alternative. What we try to also do is bring a variety of different items to the restaurants. Now, Oscar's beautiful steakhouse provides a lot, but chef will also put different specials on. Yeah. So we go out and source. Okay. So he may say, hey, this week I'm going to do a truffle baked potato, or I'm going to do, or a simple mac and cheese, or I'll do it high end, who knows what it's going to be, white French truffle, right? Some of the most expensive things with saffron, whatever. But my point is that if they want these and these things exist, we're bringing in. We bring in cheeses from all over the world and all sorts of things.
And so when I'm sitting in a restaurant and they say this sushi's from Japan or this sea bass is from Greece,
true.
They're flying that frozen sometimes same day.
No, and some not frozen. Sometimes live. I mean, the lobsters that we shoot and the oysters and stuff, they're all live. I mean, that's what's fascinating is the logistics has come so far. I mean, you think about it. You come from... my grandfather.
By the way, there's Chef Ben right there, the best chef in Las Vegas, right there.
Hey, Chef, how are you?
Chef of Oscar's just walking through as we're talking about the best food. I think he can hear good food.
No, it's great. And a plug to him. And we talk about what's the largest island or state that consumes spam the most. It's Hawaii, and he obviously came from there. So we do spam all the way up to high-end truffles and oysters and fish, but. The thing that we want to do is provide not only the items but the service to go with it. Jonathan, you talked about frozen fish. There's a place, there's a purpose for it, but people also want live product, right? Let's look at produce. Produce will turn. I mean, strawberries could turn within 6 hours depending on what they're exposed to because of the climates. So we're pulling produce from Mexico and Arizona, California, Florida, but all over. It could be Costa Rica. Even Canada, into our backyard. You'd be surprised how much local product comes out in a certain amount of time, especially in southern Utah. Yeah. So those are the things that we're doing.
What would be the timetable from a fish or sushi that's in Japan to your plate here in Las Vegas? Like, what does that logistics look like?
Probably
fresh on a plane.
Fresh on a plane. They're probably less than 3 days. I mean, you're loading it, you're flying it. Usually they're flying it at night because they're usually going to put it on. Some of them will put on the major airlines, commercial airlines, but most of them will put them on cargo airlines because they're made for that, and they can turn around. I mean, as early as 24 hours. Just depend. But you've got flight times and things like that they're working with, and it depends also on the pattern with the chef calls and when they're processing product, right? Okay. So
and then it's coming into your distribution center,
directly.
Put onto one of your trucks, and truck drives to one of the hotel casinos, loads it in, and then it's on your plate.
I mean, I'm delivering to 9 states. I'm coming in distribution centers. Products coming in. I'm turning it. Sometimes I'm turning it within 12 hours. Sometimes I'm turning it within 24 hours of that order being placed. That's pretty impressive,
no,
right?
Amazing.
It's better than Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing is we're pretty accurate. I mean, that's the biggest thing. But like Amazon, there's a place for that. We're not at Amazon, and we don't want to be. I'm not necessarily want to be the biggest, but I would like to be the best. Yeah. And that's what we train toward. And there's a culture behind that. We have a culture. I don't know that they really do. I mean, they're publicly traded. We're not publicly traded. We answer to Main Street, not Wall Street.
Right. Yeah. On the when your grandfather was doing this in Utah, I'm just fascinated because there was no planes, there was trains, but no one was bringing food in, fresh fish, and all these things. So he built the business around local produce. Obviously, scaled hugely. When then did you decide to move this and grow it into other states and specifically into Las Vegas? Was that your decision or was it your father's? Were you already in Las Vegas at that time?
Vegas was our decision, but really, to give Dad credit, how we ended up into Vegas was we were serving a lot of the national accounts. So all the fast food, most of the fast food companies that you can understand that they're here today, we were coming down, but we weren't delivering every day. They were only taking a couple, maybe 3 times a week delivery, right? So it was easy. It was easy to run down there, but the challenge was the recovery. So if a manufacturer was out of something or whatever and they needed it, you had to find the product. Really, when we came into Vegas was when my father was getting ready to step away from the business, and I told him, I said, Dad, his name's Bill. I said, Dad, I really think we need to expand into Las Vegas from a territory side. And that term we use that is where the independent restaurants are. Oscar's is an independent restaurant, a lot of them. From down to the little diner all the way up to, big national accounts. But really, it could be one restaurant. And that's what's considered a territory, street account, if you will. Yeah. And I said, I believe we need to come down here, not only to service the national accounts, but I believe it's time because if you look back in the day in the history of Las Vegas, it was built all on family businesses, especially in food service. Mm-hmm. There are not a lot anymore. They're publicly traded. We're not. And we've been around a lot longer than they have. And our name means everything to us. So bringing that back was a big motivation for us. And we love the city. We had a lot of history and lore from coming down for food shows at all the hotels with Mom and Dad to now my kids, they graduated. They went to the Meadows School.
So it wasn't with the sort of proliferation of the chef-driven restaurants and that fine dining that Vegas became known for maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was even before then?
I would say before then, but customers really, Jonathan Dass answered a different way, is customers really would drive our business. If you opened up, say, another Oscar's and you say, hey, I'm going to open up one in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
That's what's really driving us.
You're going to come service me there.
Correct. And we do service that area. I mean,
okay.
But does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your customers are determining
correct
where you're growing to. Now you said you're in 9 states?
We are. We're not in 100% of those states, but we're touching a lot of them, right? So we're in, we're up in Oregon, but we're not touching all of Oregon. We're in Washington, not touching it at all, but we're doing all of Idaho. We just opened up Montana, all Utah. We do most of Wyoming, but it's pretty desolate up there.
Yeah.
Nevada, parts of Arizona. And so we're in Colorado, and we're touching and going into California, and we're getting pulled even more into California because we service and we have a distribution in Reno, right, which is growing as well.
Are there any sort of restrictions or licenses like the liquor distribution? Is it more of a free for all?
Yeah, I would say if you ask my father, he'll tell you there's probably 65 regulatory agencies that we answer to. I don't know if it's that many, but I know it's more than 55. Let's put it that way. So he's pretty close. There are. I mean, there's restrictions from what you dress your truck up like. A lot of them want tail cones for streamlining the tail of the tractor. Mm-hmm. They want the hubs covered. That's California regulation. That doesn't apply in Nevada or Utah or the other states that we go to. But other states have different regulations. Like Arizona will not let me handle too long of a truck, like handing back-to-back doubles of 53-footers. I have to break those down to smaller trailers. So when we load our trips, again, and going back to logistics, is those workload planners that are our team members that are working in our warehouse, they're looking at the diagrams and the weight loads that are going in those order sizes, and they are determining, much like the airlines do, what size of that plane, what the weight is, right, and the balance is going to be on that truck. And hours of service, because they can only work 11. They can only drive really logistically 11 hours, and then they have to sleep.
The truck drivers.
Correct.
So and that's 11 hours there and back.
Drive time. We don't do that. We every driver comes back home. Now, we do have routes that drivers will say, hey, I'd like to stay over because they're going to stay over and then come back.
Yeah.
They have that choice to do that. But one of our selling points, too, is that every driver will come back home to their families, and we want them safe. And that's very, very important because where we go, we have drop depots,
yeah,
so they can stay, drop a trailer, and then there's local residents. So Boise, you have a drop trailer, you have a trailer area there, right? Depot, we call it. We go up, we drop a trailer. Those local drivers pick up and go there. So they're all going back home. That driver just turns and comes back home. And we backhaul product, too. Right?
Speaking of trucking, just because I think you'd have a strong opinion about it one way or the other, what are your thoughts on the driverless trucking technology that's starting to come out? And, I'm sure you're looking at different technologies to speed up, that delivery time anyway.
Correct.
But What have been your thoughts on seeing? I'm sure you've seen some of the driverless trucking.
Well, I put money down on the Tesla truck a long time ago, and they still haven't delivered it. We looked at Nikola because they had a connection to Utah. I actually sat on the governor's economic board up there at one time, and we did an incentive for them, and it was always post-performance, so they had to perform. They didn't. They were bankrupt. We looked at Kenworth has one out there, but the challenge is they're really expensive. So what I can get in with the tractors is that I'm running right now, of course it's using diesel fuel, versus the electric, and it's a range issue. So you have weight, and then you also have weight to be able to pull product because that trailer is full. So the challenge is the electric, even in the cars, they're not foolproof. I mean, they're still trying to work them out. I mean, a great idea. I think what you're going to start seeing, and I've seen this with CEOs of large automobile companies that are coming out, is that they're going to probably go to the hybrid.
Yeah.
Two things. Politically, I think it pacifies the oil and the electrical side of things for both sides that you take.
Yeah.
The other thing is then you have all this waste with the batteries, right? So you still have a bit of an issue, but you're appeasing both sides, and you can get the range, and you can still get the torque and power. And I think you're going to see a pivot in talking to car dealers and owners that I think you're going to start seeing that pivot back to a more hybrid.
To a more hybrid model.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the trucks as well, but. Things are expensive, right? I mean, people don't realize that not only you have the tractor, but you have a trailer, and you have two sources of fuel. The trailer has to be cooled. I mean, all our trailers are temped. You can't put
food, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't put produce in a 110-degree trailer along with frozen. What you do is you have those, Thermo Kings or those coolers chill down those trailers that are insulated. We got 4 inches of insulation. We have 4 inches insulation around, and then 3 compartment. Frozen, cooler, dry.
Whenever I see one of your trucks, I always take a picture of it and send it to you.
You're very kind, and I appreciate it.
Especially when I'm in Park City. I see his trucks everywhere in Park City. I take a picture of the truck, make sure the driver's doing a good job, parked correctly.
Yes.
Got his lights on, doing everything the right way.
You're very kind, and I love it. And I send it to the drivers. I send it to the team because, there's nothing more proud, especially to be a family member with your billboard going down. That's why they're white. Because, nobody wants to go into a dirty restaurant, right, or a hotel, but nobody also wants to see, dirty trucks or the inside of a trailer.
Oh,
so
that's interesting. That's why you have them white. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I am fascinated by this business and this operation. You have, like, in Las Vegas, I read the other day, something like 4,500 restaurants approximately. I read it's also the highest per capita, I don't know, in the country. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but that's a lot of restaurants. And then you look at it from the perspective of, the Plaza, we have 1,000 rooms, but if you look at the Venetian Palazzo, 7,000 rooms, and you got 30 plus restaurants there, that's a small city. In many places, that would be a small city. Mm-hmm. That many people, being in charge of a place like that is like being the mayor of a city, or you're overseeing a huge operation, and the amount of food and produce that's going into those places. And not just that, you got the high-end restaurants that's selling duck from a specific place. You're selling fish from a specific place. That operation is unbelievable when you think about all the pieces that have to come together for the consumer, me and you, who go for dinner, sit down to eat something like that.
Right.
It's an unbelievable process that we're living in a desert and eating this, and it's all happening through the supply chain that you basically oversee a big portion of. So it's a fascinating insight for our our listeners to be able to be exposed into that kind of insight. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No, I appreciate Jonathan having me. I mean, it's really neat. I mean, Nicholas and Company is trying to do the right thing culturally. I mean, Nicholas was my grandfather, but the company and the people.
How does your Greek heritage influence the culture of the company today? How many employees do you have right now?
Almost 1,000. Well, we had more about right now we're about 1,000.
Why it was COVID an impact to you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was the first time just a side story. It was the first time we ever had a layoff in the history of our company. We laid off 12%, and then when it came back, we ended up keeping We ended up hiring 9% back, and ended up paying. So people took a hiatus. Nicole and I, we didn't take a paycheck. We put a hiatus. We had customers pay COD going forward. But we worked really hard. We worked through it. We retro paid all of our team members with bonus and came back. And so basically that maybe 3% you said to come back, we were probably maybe a little bit too much fat on the bone, if you will. Mm-hmm. We probably duplicated too much. So it gave us an opportunity to kind of right size. And now to this day, I mean, we're still hiring, which has been fascinating, and we appreciate it. And it made COVID was, it was a test. but it made us step up and realize, what we need to do better. I did ask, as a sidebar, Jonathan, I did ask my father, I called him and I said, Dad, it's pretty scary times. And I said, what's one of the biggest things that happened in the impact of your life? He's 89 years old. And he goes, you'll never guess. And I said, what's that? I said, wars, Vietnam. He goes, nope, polio.
Yeah.
He goes, the difference with polio is that, people did, wear masks. They did hunker in. They didn't go out. We didn't know how you got it, whether it was through bodily fluids or the air, whatever. But the difference between COVID and polio was on the scare tactic, if you will, is the government didn't step in and shut everything down.
Right.
So, I think it helped us become a better, more efficient company. And we look back on that and learned a lot of things from that.
But when you say you were scared, I guess I don't understand, because you guys provide something that can never go away. So if you own an office building, I get it. If you were in some kind of industry that long term could be impacted by the impact, let's say it was never going away.
Right.
We still have to eat, otherwise we're all doomed.
Well,
right?
I think
that's why the grocery stores never got shut down, because what are you supposed to do?
Well, we supplied those grocery stores. I had friends calling me for chicken and toilet paper. I said, how much do you want? I've got a whole Nicholas & Company truck.
Oh, I know. I remember that.
Yeah, you remember
that? Yeah.
I don't know. I guess scared is probably a big word. I mean, you obviously in a leader or CEO or ownership role that we're in, you don't want to show, that you're scared. You want to make sure you're steadfast in providing for everybody. It was just important that we rallied all of our team members. We had them all on Zoom. Operations didn't stop, though. The trucks and the team members in operations, I mean, they were diligent. We had to separate them, but they got the orders out because people were still eating, to your point, Jonathan.
People have to eat.
They have to eat.
Someone's got to provide the food.
Well, and
we might not be eating fresh fish from Japan, but somebody's got to get food to the population.
And the manufacturers were hit very, very hard. I mean, there's still manufacturers, large companies, I can mention, I won't, that are still struggling with supply chain because of labor or wage inflation, right?
Yeah.
And getting the lines up and running. So, it was a challenge.
You touched on it a few times about culture, and I know culture is a big thing for Nicholas & Company. Can you kind of dive in? I know you've won multiple awards for Best of Company in Salt Lake City, things like that. So what goes into bringing that, keeping that culture there, as well as, being able to go through the pandemic and being able to retain as many people as you did during that process?
And Gary,
because they're tied together.
Yeah, well, it's a great question because, my wife is our culture cop. It means that one thing even my grandfather in his broken Greeklish, as we call it, would always, remind us is your name is everything. When you go to the mortuary,
you can't do the hand signals because we don't have video here.
No.
People can't see what you're pointing to.
No, you're right. No, I'm just saying when you go out to the funeral and you say your epitaph,
yes,
they're going to say Jossel, great family, or SOB. What do you want it to be? That's my grandfather used to say at Mouskindass. Great person.
Gary, what do you think it's going to say? For me, what's it going to say?
Oh no, you know what? I'm going to leave that up to the listeners.
Fantastic, tremendous guy. So the name is everything. But this is interesting, Gary. You bring this up, and I'm going to tell you about what we went through on a cultural. Basically, it was looking of who we are. There's a word in Greek called philotomo. Philotomo, there's no English translation. So the Greek translation back into English is the love of honor to do what's right, to right the wrongs.
Okay.
And when Nicole and I were going through our mission statement, my grandfather had one, my father had one, and then it was time for us to update one. We were going around and we started engaging all of our team members to say, what would you like it to say? And we had their kids. Guys, for 9 months, I had in my house all sorts of sticky notes and the Post-it paper, and down in the office we had and everybody's writing stuff down. And we kept coming to this word philotomo. And Nicole and I are like, man, is it just too Greek? Is it going to freak people out? He can't say it. Is it weird? And it just kept coming back. And the team members kept going back. This is what it's come back to. And that's what it came back to. So that's the overarching, right? But I think you have to look back and, the old saying to treat people like you'd like to be treated. Yes, absolutely. But it also can be weaponized against you, too. Oh, you're not treating me with philotomo. Oh, you're not doing this. Well, it works both ways. And so we think we've done a really good job of harnessing people's ideas, their feelings, and who they are. But at the end of the day, we have a job to do as well. Right. And we have a reputation. So when those trucks do go down the road and Jonathan sends me a picture, I want to know that they're clean. Listen, bad weather, they're going to get dirty. But realistically, we want them to be clean. Our name's on it. We want our drivers to behave themselves and be proper. Nicole and I are out there constantly. My dad is out there handing Nicholas and Company sugar packets in Dallas, Texas. We're not down to Dallas, but it sure upsets the other food distributors when they see these Nicholas and Company sugar packets, and it's fun. But the thing about it is we're here. My family lives here. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars investing in this town, right. And we're continuing to invest in this town, and we just want to do what's right. Again, you look at all the hotels. You look at this hotel. You look at the restaurants, things. Aside from the publicly traded companies and some of those concepts, which we service, it was built on family business.
Right.
And we would love to see that continue and take away the transactional part.
And keeping that family environment is important to all of your staff. We do it here at the hotel where everybody kind of feels like a family. It's not just a number or an employee number, something like that. So
but I wonder how much of it is influenced by your Greek culture. I was saying on a previous episode that I was just in Greece, and the level of service and attention to detail and care for your experience is just unrivaled. It's wonderful. Is that coming from a Greek culture? Or is that just training?
100%.
It is?
I think, well, and I also think it's, my wife is actually Italian, and she comes from a strong Italian background, and they also.
That's where you get the hands moving.
Yeah, we get the hands. Well, this is a joke, but I tell people my son was out the other day, and the neighbor's going, "Why, Nicholas, my son, why are you always yelling and screaming?" He's like, "We're not. We're just having a conversation, right? If we sat on our hands, we couldn't speak." So we have fun with it, but it really is a cultural base. It's to Jonathan's point. When you go there, Greeks, it's very simple. This is what they'll tell you, especially from our family at Greece. They'll say we have our God, we have our sun, we have our sea, and we have our land, and it provides everything that we need. And then we have our family. So when you go there, they may not have much, but when you walk out of there, it's an abundance. And I think, and if you ask my father, everything was created from the Greeks, right? I think, you see My Big Fat Greek Wedding, they're always talking about that. But you look at some of the things that have happened over the years. There's still the Acropolis and, mathematics and that. And we like to say that was our first Nicholas and Company distribution was the Acropolis. That was where supply chain really started.
Well, not to switch gears on you, but we don't want to keep you all day.
No worries.
What do you think about what's happening in downtown Las Vegas? You spend much time here. I know you come to Oscars. I just walked you through our bar. I've had drinks with you at the Sand Dollar before. But generally, any thoughts on what's happening in downtown? I know you have a box at the Smith Center.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. And theater and arts are big in our family, and it's wonderful. But what I love, Jonathan, what's so cool about this is being from a little kid, if you will, coming through here to all the way up to now, seeing not only the transformation, but what I've loved what you've done, part of this, and some of your friends that you've been so graciously able to introduce me to and build these relationships is invest in going back to this either Art Deco or mid-century and this cool motif, which is now my kids, they're millennials, right, and Z generation, they're like, it is so cool. We're coming back to this. We like the vibe. Yeah. Downtown, you've captured something that I don't know what other city has captured, is bringing that back. Yeah, you have the Strip, and that serves its purpose, and then you have off the Strip, and that serves its purpose. But what you have done downtown is, remember, you were the iconic, basically the foundation and base.
On Main Street.
And it's where it happened, and you're bringing that back. And to keep that is hard. It's not easy. It's like keeping your culture, because the bigger you get, my dad, he'd walk in the warehouse, he knew everybody, right? Now we're a big company, and I try to do a really good job. That's probably one of the hardest challenges. And so when you're challenged by big, either whether publicly traded companies or trying to put some kind of concept on the corner that has 4,000 concepts, you don't need any more. Mm-hmm. It is a challenge because you want that family feel. So I hope that's answered what I've seen, but I love what you've done. Oscars, I like the motif. I like what you've done downstairs with the carousel and the bar.
Any favorite restaurants down here?
Yours.
Yeah.
It's definitely done a good job.
Very good answer.
Yeah.
Just wrapping up, we ask this question to all of our guests, and I especially want to hear your answer. What advice would you give young entrepreneurs who are looking to get into business or into the food distribution industry? What advice would you give young entrepreneurs kind of coming out of college or working their way up?
Find a mentor.
Okay.
I truly believe culture is, they say culture kings. It's not a cliche. It truly is. It's hard for a younger person to come in and find that. But when they find something they really like, that's a culture.
Yeah.
Now it's trying to emphasize that and magnify it 1,000 times. And so I truly believe, and even to this day, is surrounding yourself around people that are better than you, and what are other aspect that you think is better, right? It could be work ethics, or it could just be how their religion, or how they take care of themselves, or their family values. And don't lose that, because people cling to that. I think people also, they cling to positiveness and energy, and there's so much negativity and social media and the bullying and stuff, all that you can really go down a rabbit hole. Put yourself around things that are really, really positive, and it sounds easy. It's not easy to do.
Right.
It's really crazy you answered that, because at the start of this episode we talked about my first mentor in Vegas. And now you just said that. That was your advice. That's pretty crazy. You weren't here for the introduction, so that's pretty crazy. That was your advice. I know we normally end on that, but actually, seeing as you're the food guy, any favorite restaurants in town? And I know your favorite restaurant is Elia, the Greek restaurant. That's my favorite Greek restaurant in town by far. So shout out to our friends at Elia.
Yeah, they do a great job. No, of course they do a great. It's a bias, because it depends on what cuisine you're looking for, or just your adventures. I mean, there's many. Jonathan, you're putting me on the spot, because there's a lot of customers, right? So I'm not going to necessarily answer that.
You better.
But I will tell you
Fred's listening. Yeah,
and we love Fred and all his concepts, and they're doing a great job, and I appreciate their partnership. But the one thing that I would say is, we do, and I think we do well. When I say we, Nicholas and Company and our family, the Mouskindass family, we go and patronize those people that patronize us. It's important that we give back. Yep. Okay, we can't do it every day, because there's thousands of restaurants and there's only a couple of us. But my point is that we go in there. I drop my business card. I want to say thank you. We're giving back, and that's all we're asking for. And coming, somewhat new into this town that's already been established for a long time, in our third, now going to fourth generation, is to give us a chance. Jonathan, you've been wonderful, introducing me to your friends that are in the hospitality industry. All we're asking for is a chance. Right. Go in there, because here's the difference. In a publicly traded company, there is no owner unless you're a stockholder. Mm-hmm. But there, you can have CEOs and that, but there is no owner in that situation. If you follow what I'm at, yep. I'm the owner. I mean, I'm coming. You're looking face to face with the owner. You're not going to get that from a publicly traded company, and I can say that with pride, because we've been doing it for almost 90 years. So it's important to us to go out and tell the story, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. But it's important because we give back to this community, and I'm not trading stock. I'm not trading on the public stock exchange, and neither is the family. Now the fourth generation, they'll choose, but right now, as they're mapping their way, as we have a trajectory and a discipline which they have to do. They have to work outside of the company for 3 years, be promoted within that job, and get a master's. Now they can do whatever they want, but if they don't do those rules, they can't come, because who's going to respect them? They can't come in as
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't want them just to be your children.
Right.
Correct.
They got to stand on their own.
So
thank more generations to come.
Amen.
So thank you so much for joining us on the corner of Main Street. If you want to stay up to date with Nicholas and Company and a little bit more about their story, go visit their website, Nicholas and Company. Do you do any social media?
I'm not the one who does the social media. The company really does it. They're all over that. So the Instagram, the Snap. I mean, they're doing nicholasandco.com. I mean, you'll get linked into all that. Twitter, which is now X now. So they're really good. We have a great marketing team that keeps up with that. So,
perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Peter, for being our guest today.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Gary.
Are you a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.